Welcome to Nomad PHP Lightning Talks. I'm Joe Ferguson. Nomad PHP Lightning Talks are 10-minute talks that gives a high-level overview or an in-depth look at a small portion of a PHP-related topic. Lightning Talks are a great way for new speakers to build their speaking resume and for long-time speakers to test drive new talk ideas. If you'd like to give a 10-minute Lightning Talk, please email me, joe@nomadphp.com. Right now we have Juan Manuel Torres, and he's going to be talking about the Symfony Console Component. Please make sure you visit Join in after the talk and leave Juan some feedback. Juan, take it away.
Let's go back to the year 2010. A horrendous ecological disaster takes place in the Gulf of Mexico. Spain makes history by winning the World Cup for the first time, and Leonardo DiCaprio is having a dream within a dream. And somewhere in California, a developer is writing his first command line interface tool for a work project. The tool helps him generate models, views, and controllers based on a database schema. He creates a single script application in PHP. Initially, it took a couple parameters, but as the requirements of his work project grew, so did the complexity of this scaffolding tool. He ends up with a file that is several thousand lines of code, difficult to maintain, and very, very opinionated. And to be honest with you, I was that developer. And I really hope that you can relate with me at some level, because let's face it, we all have written spaghetti code. Now, based on this experience, some of you may ask, well, why would you want to write a CLI application with PHP to begin with? Well, PHP added support for this CLI over 13 years ago. This is not new technology. And chances are that if you're a PHP developer, at one point or another, you will need to write a CLI script to help you perform different things like cron jobs, database migrations, maintenance tasks, long-running processes. Sure, you can write these tasks using other languages like Python, shell script, or Perl. But then you will be missing of the incredible ecosystem of tools that PHP has to offer nowadays. It is true that tools are not the problem. Developers are. Although in many instances, tools are so generic that they don't provide a model to follow a set of best practices. Other tools, like frameworks and components, they do. And Symfony is one of such tools. The console component specifically provides a simple model to create testable, reusable, and easy to maintain applications. Now let's take a look at what are the main building blocks to create your first command line application using the Symfony Console Component. We have applications. This is a class that helps you set up your commands. Then we have commands. These are classes that set up and execute your business logic. And finally, we have inputs and outputs. These classes help your commands interact with the user. Now, there's a lot more that is not covered in this lightning talk, like the question helper, the formatted helper, the progress bar, tables, and testing. I just didn't have enough time to get through everything. Let's take a look at this representation of what happens when you use the console component. On the right, you have a representation of the application class, and then we have a representation of the terminal. The app, it's the executable file. This is the entry point to our application. We are going to be developing right now a very simple command called echo. So when the application runs, the echo command, we're going to be adding it into the application. The echo command takes a single value. This value is a string of characters, and the purpose of the echo command is to print whatever value is passed to it right back into standard output. So when the user hits enter, the application takes the arguments that are passed via PHP argv, the argv array, and it creates an input object. It also creates an output object that gets injected into the command. The command then executes a business logic, and in this particular case, we use the output to print it back to the terminal. Now let's actually write this echo command. And when we work with commands, there are two parts to it. One is the configuration, and the other part is the execution. This is a shell command. This is our echo command. It extends the base Symfony command. And we have two methods that provide the configuration of the execution, configure and execute. In the configuration, or in the configure method rather, you set up important information about the command, such as what is its name, the description, a set of arguments and options that your command may take. Now, arguments are positional parameters that come after your command when you are typing it in the terminal. These require a name, a mode, a description, and potentially a default value. If the mode is optional, then you can use a default value. If it's required, then we can't put a default value. Options are similar to arguments, but they're optional and they are basically name parameters. This means that you have to use them using its name. In this case, we're going to use the option using -- color, or its short name -c. It also takes a mode, a description, and a default value. Options can be used as flags, true or false. In that particular case, the mode will be different. We are choosing to use it as an option that actually takes a value. Now, notice that there are these values right here, the descriptions, that are optional, but they are very, very important because they provide documentation for your commands. And your future self and the users of your commands will be grateful with you if you put them. Now let's move on to the execution portion of the command. I mentioned before that the application injects an input and an output to help you interact with the user. The input provides helpful methods to get the arguments and options, which we defined in the configure method, by name. Here we are getting the value and the color, assigning it to variables, and then we use the output object to write a line back to a standard output. Notice that the value is wrapped in this tag called FG, and we're giving it the value of color name. FG is part of the Symfony formatting ability, and what it does behind the scenes is it transforms that particular tag into a valid ANSI escape code, and meaning that you will be able to see your value with the specific color. The last piece of the puzzle is the application. This is an executable file, and really, most of these is boilerplate code. The interesting part of the last 3 lines of code. The application, this is a Symfony application, a default application that you can use. You use the add method to create or add the command that we just created, and then we run it. Let's take a look at how these actually work in the terminal. If I execute the app file, which is that last file that you saw, it's going to run. So far, I have not given it any commands. Now, notice that I have all this helpful information, such as the usage and the available commands. Here, I have the echo command that we just created. Symfony provides 2 commands that come from default to help you generate some of this information. So let's use the echo command. Notice that because I chose to have a default value for my command, which was to hear crickets in case that there was no values, that's what it prints out. Now, if I actually say hello, it will print hello. If I use the flag color, it will print hello in blue. or cyan or red. I can also use this short name, -c, and say, let's use a different color, yellow. Now, if for some reason something goes wrong, I have a typo. Notice how I get this nice red box. It's basically the Symfony exception saying like, hey, you have an invalid color name. This is how you should use it. Now, this is helpful because whenever something goes wrong, you will definitely know. Finally, before we move on with the presentation, if I use --help for my command, notice how the Symfony Console Component uses the descriptions to tell me, what the arguments are, what the options are for, what the default values are, and the description of the command. So in just a few lines of code, we were able to create a very nice application. We didn't have to write a lot of boilerplate code and focus only on things that matter. Now, these are some best practices that I've personally learned over the years using these particular components. The first one is think of commands as controllers in an MVC framework. Notice it is not a controller, just think of it as the place where you put the glue code of your business logic. Don't just dump a whole bunch of code in there, because you can end up in a pretty similar place where I was in 2010. Second, and I already mentioned these, but I think it's very, very important, is add descriptions to commands, arguments, and options. Why? Because they provide documentation for your future self and the users of your commands. Now, just like everything else, this component goes better together. And these are just some components that I personally find that go really, really well with the console component, like the Symfony process component, which enables you to execute commands in sub-processes. The event dispatcher. Event dispatcher enables developers to extend the functionality of your applications without making modifications to the existing code. You can think of it as a plugging mechanism. It is really, really cool, and I love it. Then there's the box project. It allows you to create a single file of .var that contains all the functionality for your command line application so that you can distribute it. Finally, supervisor D. This is a Python project, but if you have long-running processes that need to be restarted in case if something goes wrong, and they need to be out for long periods of time, supervisor, it's very easy to use and will help you accomplish this. That's it. Just so you know, I wrote an article on how to write better CLI tools with Symfony components in the PHP Architect magazine, the January issue of 2016. Check it out. I put a lot of work and love into it, and it goes a lot deeper into what we covered today. My name is Juan Manuel Torres, and I live in the beautiful city of San Diego, California, and I work for an amazing tech company called MindTouch. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us for another Nomad PHP Lightning Talk. If you'd like to give a lightning talk, please email me, joe@nomadphp.com. Please make sure you visit JoinDen and leave Juan some feedback.